Power never comes freely. It must be seized, often in blood. Tonight, we step into the shadowed corridors of early Joseon, where loyalty clashed with ambition, and where a single prince carved his way to the throne through betrayal and steel. And in this crucible of betrayal, one prince would rise above the rest. Yi Bangwon, the man who would become King Taejong. To some, he was a visionary ruler who secured the dynasty's survival. To others, a fratricidal tyrant who drowned kin and scholar alike in blood. This is not just a story of a king. It is a story of what happens when the cost of stability is measured in family graves. Yi Bangwon was born in 1367, the fifth son of Yi Songye, the warrior who would topple the Goryeo dynasty and found Joseon. From an early age, Bangwon stood apart. He was not the eldest, nor the most favored, but he carried two weapons more dangerous than any sword: his intellect and his will. When Yi Songye overthrew Goryeo in 1392, Bangwon was at his side. He forged alliances with Neo-Confucian reformers, like King Taejong, who envisioned Joseon as a scholar's kingdom, guided by morality and principle. But behind the surface, differences festered. King Taejong dreamed of a state where kings reigned but ministers ruled. Bangwon, sharp-eyed, believed power should not be shackled. He saw himself not as a tool of scholars, but as one destined to lead. The path to power was rarely his alone. When Queen Sindok, Songye's second wife, secured the crown prince title for her young son, Yi Bang-suk, Bangwon's years of loyalty and bloodshed were cast aside. In this slight, the seeds of rebellion were sown. In 1398, that simmering rivalry erupted into open war, the first Strife of Princes. Queen Sindok died suddenly, leaving her children vulnerable. Bangwon struck. With loyal generals and court allies, he unleashed a coup history calls the first Strife of Princes. Blood spilled across the royal court. The child crown prince, Yi Bang-suk, and his brother, Yi Bang-bon, were cut down. The blood spilled in Gyeongbokgung's halls was more than family tragedy. It was the death of the scholar's dream, the end of a Joseon guided by ministers, and the birth of one ruled by fear. King Taejong, architect of Joseon's new order, and Bangwon's greatest rival, was ambushed and slayed at Seongjuk Bridge, an act that symbolized both bitter personal rivalry and the struggle over whether kings or ministers would rule. To Bangwon, it was necessity. To others, it was fratricide and treason. King Taejong, grief-stricken and disillusioned, could not bear the slaughter of his sons and his trusted minister. He abdicated, placing his second son Yi Bangwa on the throne as King Taejong. But behind the curtain, everyone knew the truth. Real power lay in Bangwon's shadow. Blood is never enough to quiet ambition. The throne, once shaken, becomes a battlefield no crown can calm. In 1400, it erupted again when Bangwon's younger brother, Yang Banggan, rallied troops to challenge his dominance. The clash, known as the Second Strife of Princes, was swift and brutal. Bangwon's forces crushed the rebellion. Banggan was exiled. His supporters were executed. King Taejong, exhausted and powerless, abdicated. Bangwon ascended at last as King Taejong, the third monarch of Joseon. Bangwon had seized the throne, but holding it would demand even greater blood. Once king, Taejong began shaping the crown in his own image. He dismantled old Goryeo institutions like the Privy Council and established the State Council, a system placing all authority squarely under royal command. To Taejong, reform was not about efficiency. It was about control. He dismantled old councils, not to modernize, but to centralize. Every law, every office, every ritual bent toward one truth. The throne belonged to him, and him alone. His rule cut down rivals without hesitation. His father-in-law, Min Jae, and the queen's powerful brothers, Min Mu-gu and Min Mu-jil, were first exiled, then executed. These were not isolated strikes. In 1410, and again in 1416, purges swept through the court, thinning aristocratic families who could challenge him. Purges became the mortar of Taejong's authority. Yet Taejong was not only ruthless. He created the Shinmungo, a great drum by which commoners could strike and appeal directly to the king. It was both symbolism and strategy, portraying himself as the people's sovereign, even as he silenced the nobility. Instituted in the early years of Taejong's reign, often dated to 1401, the Shinmungo petition drum let ordinary subjects bring grievances directly to the monarch, a move that simultaneously burnished Taejong's image as the people's protector and allowed him to bypass aristocratic intermediaries. His marriage to Queen Yeongyung was once a bond of alliance, but trust between them soured, poisoned by suspicion and the queen's attempts to secure the succession of her own sons. Over the following years, Queen Yeongyung's brothers were first exiled, then died in succession. Whether by execution, forced suicide, or design remains debated. What mattered was clear. Her family line was erased from power. Modern historians note the official language of the annals and debate whether these deaths were executions, forced suicides, or otherwise arranged. A grim illustration of how dynastic security could be enforced through banishment and lethal purges. To Taejong, these were threats removed. To Queen Yeongyung, they were her family, extinguished one by one. By the time his reign matured, Taejong had done what no other prince could. He secured Joseon's throne beyond dispute. His iron hand laid the foundation for his son, King Taejong the Great, whose era would be remembered as Korea's golden age: science, governance, and the birth of Hangul. Sejong's golden age shines brightly in Korea's memory, but behind its brilliance lies Taejong's shadow, the graveyard he built to secure a throne. Without the father's ruthlessness, there could be no son's enlightenment. Stability came at the cost of brothers, ministers, and in-laws buried too soon. King Taejong, a man who forged a dynasty's future by drowning his present in blood. To some, he is the savior who secured Joseon's survival. To others, a reminder that power, once tasted, demands endless sacrifice. This has been Court of the Crane. If history's shadows intrigue you, remember to like, subscribe, and tell us what figures you want us to unearth next. Until then, remember, every crown is bought, but the price is never paid by kings alone.